Hey, hello. This is Tiger, and you are here on my stream for playing Train Sim World 3. Today is high speed on German tracks. The ICE3 actually is it, and yeah, you're right, HJ. It's really a long loading screen because the game needs that much time to get all the DLCs ready. And still, I do not have all the DLCs that I used to have before because they are still fighting on Epic Game Store to make them available. But we have been promised that they will be there at the end of the week, and then we can play Dresden and Brighton Mainline and St. Patrick again. Today we are going to Schnellfahrstrecke Kassel-Würzburg, the remaining core route of the Train Sim World 3 that we have not played yet. We have played the Caron Pass, we have played the Southeastern Highspeed. We have not played the Spirit of Steam. This will be a different story on the stream here. But now we will play Schnellfahrstrecke Kassel-Würzburg. There are two trains mainly for the passenger high-speed services, the ICE1 and the ICE3. And I want to play the ICE3 not only because I think it is the train that is a bit nicer to handle, but also because more things on the displays actually work on the 403 on the ICE3 compared to the ICE 401. On Sunday we will be running some scenarios with some special situations in LZB, and then we will be running the 401 as well. So today is the ICE3. On foot we spawn to find our train. We are going to not at Fulda, not at Würzburg, not at Rohrbach, Burgsinn, all that stuff. We want to start at Kassel-Wilhelmshöhe in Kassel. Yes, and the service that I picked is 1321. I have not played it yet, but I think it is a service of that kind that I want to play. Let's set the scene for something in March, dynamic weather. Let's start with clear weather and let's see what we are getting. So we are supposed to look for an ICE3 train that is already waiting for us, or shortly will be arriving, so that we can take it over. It will be a train that is actually composed of two ICE3 trains, because one part of it comes from Hanover, the other one from Hamburg-Altona. So let's see where the train is that we are supposed to drive. Is it the one waiting over there, or is it one that is still to come? Maybe we can find some passenger information screens to tell us that. We have at least 5 minutes to find our train. Maybe we find at least some passenger information screens in the meantime. Yeah, the Pringle ads. Well, where's the train? Yeah, where is the train? There's at least a passenger information spot. Halle? No, we're not going to Halle. München, that looks quite good. That is our train. Is it here or is it still to come? What direction actually are we looking? We are looking north, so this is the direction from which the train is supposed to arrive. And there is the red signal. So most probably it is arriving here, because 1321 is in the roster. 1323 departure time here, that fits the service number, agrees with what we are expecting. So all we need is the train to arrive. It can't be long, since we are supposed to take over the train at 21, so it's 3 minutes max that the train is still. Yeah, that is like a real life situation, running around like a headless chicken, not knowing to which platform you have to go. Reminds me of arriving at Frankfurt Airport a couple of weeks ago and running around in Frankfurt Airport and the rail terminal with no clue where our suitcases are, and navigating the not so short distance between the flight gates and the rail terminal and looking for our suitcases. Today this is easier. We just have to wait for the train to arrive. The train can actually not really go somewhere else. It is supposed to get to this platform. In real life, those thingies here tell you in which parts of the platform the train is supposed to stop. Not so in the game. But unlike real life, we can actually run around. Well, we can hear sirens. I hope this is not a bad sign that our train wrecked somewhere. Well, actually, I thought give us 5 minutes so that we can have a look at the train before we start driving it. But as it looks, this is the train, but this is not our train. This is an ICE1 coming from the south, from Würzburg or Fulda, and obviously not the one that we want to take over. Doesn't say anything about a delay, so most probably it will be here soon. Can we go up there? No, we can't. The reds here almost look violet, like in France. What do you think? That sign means that you are not supposed to go beyond this point unless you are authorized personnel, as we are, or looking for some collectibles in the game. Then you are allowed to go there. No, this is not our train. This is the train for the other direction. There it comes, our train. There it is. On one of the other streams you asked whether there are trains with restaurant cars, and this one has a restaurant car. Yes, it has part of the livery is green. So this is the restaurant car, if you want to have a look at it. See? But I actually have to make haste so that the IA driver does not go without me. Now I am stuck between the people here. If I don't manage If I don't manage to take over the train fast enough, then we will have to spawn in the service directly. The thing is that those trains do not have doors that go to the cab directly, but you have to go through the passenger area and then enter here. Guy or sister, I'm going to relieve you and take over the train. I will have to open the doors again. Ah yeah, it's finished. What we have to do to set up this train is to activate our PCB, LZB and the CIFA in this compartment. If the main circuit breaker is already on, and all we need to do is to put the reverser to forward. Doors. It always says error, Störung, for no apparent reason. We're setting the AFB, that is the cruise control system. We do that on this computer here. We press the AFB and then we select V Sollfreigabe. That means that the train is supposed to apply power to get to a speed that is set with this lever here. So I can set from 0 to 330. This is my preset for the cruise control system. The doors can be locked here with this switch. This is the lever for the brakes. They are released here. Headlights are normal. We can run with that. Throttle is off. And this is already all the setup that you need if you start this train from from already being started and set up. So all we need to do to start in LZB, what we already are, we can see that here. The B tells us LZB mode is active. The U tells us that this is already receiving data, and we're getting here our data for the incoming speed limits. So to start the train, we can set the AFB to maximum, release the brakes, what already happened, and then apply power and the train will start. You can see it on the power meter here. That little yellow thingy is your preset. And the AFB does a lot for you. You don't need to manage your speed on your own. You just set the preset and then you give throttle and the train calculates how much power it will need. It will never take more throttle than you allow the train to apply, but sometimes less if he thinks less is enough. And if the AFB is connected with the LZB, then the LZB will read the speed limits that are actually valid and upcoming, and then only allows the IFB to go to the speed limit and not beyond. And if there is a speed limit incoming, the LZB computer calculates the brake curve that is necessary to slow down the train to be at the reduced speed as soon as you hit the speed limit. So as soon as everything works as it is supposed to work, this train is really easy to drive. You don't need to manage speed. You don't really need to brake a lot. All you need to do is to set the AFB to max. There is actually a VR application. I don't know how far they are, but there are people talking on the forums about VR. And I think they had it for a short while, but then it got too complicated, and so they skipped it again. I think it's one of the projects that is still on the list, but has not gotten that far. While we are talking, you can see that the AFB is switching to higher and higher speeds because the LZB allows it. In the tunnel we switch our lights to high beams. Outside the tunnels I will reduce it to dimmed high beams, or even to normal headlights, so that we actually have something to do on our journey. You can see we have 81 kilometers to go to Fulda, and most of the time the LZB combined with the LZB computer will just do everything for you. To prevent the train from overspeeding for 1 or 2 clicks, you can always reduce power a bit as soon as you get close to your maximum speed, especially on declines, on descents. This can make sense. Like now we're getting close to our 250, we can reduce to 80%. Because from what I've seen from the few services that I already played, you have a lot of time to get to your target here. So, you've already seen our LZB display here, that is more or less centered around the speedometer. What you sometimes see flashing up here in this point is the CIFA. You will get this icon of a boot pressing a pedal. The CIFA is actually quite aggressive on those ICE trains, so you better make sure that you hit your CIFA pedal fast enough. Now the LZB gives you as the next speed limit 250 kilometers in 10 kilometers. 250 is line speed here, so we have clear skies. We can go as fast as it is possible within the speed limits that apply to this track here. And whilst we are running here, I wanted to have a look on what is LZB and why do we need it. You have seen it in action, but what is the background to it? Imagine this is a track and you are a train running on this track. If you don't have LZB, if you don't have anything, you only can see a certain partition of the track, and if you want to make sure that you can stop your train in front of an obstacle as soon as it arises, you would be limited to a very slow velocity to always be able to stop your train. Oh yeah, sorry. Now it is open. This is the track, this is the train. And I was just saying, imagine you would only always be restricted to having to stop on site. Then you couldn't go very fast because your train takes usually a lot of distance to come to a stop. And so you know that from the American system, restricted speed, or in every system more or less, there is a signal that tells you don't go faster than with a velocity that always allows you to stop. This is why people invented signals, because signals tell you about the status of the track in front of you. But obviously signals are always limited to the next block. If you see a green signal in front of you, you know, okay, the next block is actually clear, you can go, but you don't know what the next signal is, or the next, or the next. There are some systems like the British where you can see, okay, I have a green signal, the next one will not be just like red, most probably I will get a yellow or a double yellow. Then you know at least 2 or 3 signals ahead that there is not an obstacle on the track. But this still does not allow you to go really fast, because if you go really fast like 250 or 300, then it might actually take several kilometers to get your train to a stop. So in the German system, more or less, they give you a foresignal telling you what the next signal will be. Then you have an indication, at least, what the next signal will be. But you have to get to the foresignal first, right? So you have always only a very limited knowledge about what the track ahead is like. If there is an obstacle, if there is another train, if there is something happening, if there is traffic, maybe a train broke down or whatever. And so the idea is, why not tell the train? And how can you tell the train? For example, that here there is a speed reduction to 100 kilometers. Far, 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 far ahead. And to tell the train this, you put cables in the track. Like those. Actually 2 cables, they are intertwined every 100 kilometers, and through this cable you can send a signal to the train, and the train picks up the signal, and you get information about the status of the track like 10 kilometers in front of the train. And 10 kilometers in front of the train gives you a lot of information, and then the more you know, the more distance you actually can, in quotation marks, see in front of you, the faster you can go. Because if you know you have 10 kilometers of track clear, then you can go so that fast that you can use those 10 kilometers for a braking distance. Those LZB cables, they have a limited length, and then the next one starts, and this divides the LZB system into areas. This is why you sometimes get those signs, you will see them in the game, LZB, that tell you here LZB area starts, or the next LZB cable starts. Those sections can be up to about 12 kilometers long, and they do not limit your view on the track, because they interchange information. Those are connected with a computer, and this computer handles all the information and sends it to the train, and they are obviously interconnected. So you always have like 10 kilometers in front of you information about what those signals are showing, what the status of the track is. Then the track is subdivided into smaller blocks, so that you actually have positions where your train can be ordered to stop or to slow down. Those blocks that are marked with block markers, Blockkennzeichen, that look like this and have a number in it. They can be like here consecutive, but they don't need to be. And they always mark the end and the beginning of a block if there is not a main signal. Those here are main signals. You can see it on the sign on the post, denoting them as a main signal. So for our 100 kilometers limit, it starts with this block here. And you know this block system from the Southeastern Highspeed in our stream that we had the other day. Those TVM block markers. That is more or less the same system. You tell the terrain driver, the engineer, that in real life here starts a new block and ends the old one, so that you have sections of the track, and well, usually you only get like different signal aspects in the TVM system or different information in the LZB system. The same applies with ECTS, European ETCS, should it be? Did I not change it? This is a spelling mistake, European Train Control System. Unfortunately, the spelling mistake was still there. They have absolutely the same system, signs that tell you in real life where one block ends and the other one starts. In LZB country it looks like this. Sometimes where tracks overlap you can have those ETCS block markers. In Germany we don't have the TVM block markers, but the system is totally the same. So, just for example, our train knows that it has to reduce its speed to 100 kilometers at this point, at block 162, and there is a lot of track in between. So it knows, okay, I can go like 230 here, not a problem. because I don't have to slow down until I get to this point. The red line is actually the line that you can see in your pause screen in the game. The speed limit is 230, at this point 100. And you are traveling with this speed, and what the LZB computer does when it gets this information, it knows how fast the train is at the moment. In the LZB directives, this is denoted as V ist in German, that is the current speed, and the V Ziel, meaning the target velocity. Ziel is target in German. And so the train computer knows the velocity that the train is traveling at the moment. It knows what speed it has to get down to, and it knows the distance to the speed limit. For that, the train actually measures how often the wheels are turning, and from the diameter of the wheels it calculates how fast the train, or how far the train traveled since the last checkpoint, so that the train knows where it is. And even more, it checks its position with those intertwined thingies of the two LZB wires. Those actually have a distance in between them of exactly 100 meters, so the train can actually realize when it gets to such a knot where those two cables intertwine, so that it knows, okay, I have traveled 100 meters. And this gets compared to the calculations with the wheel diameters, and so the train actually knows where it is, and it knows what distance it has to the next speed reduction. And so it can calculate a brake curve, at what point it has to apply brakes to get the speed down to the target speed until it actually hits the point where it works. So this is the basic principle of LZB, and obviously this does not necessarily need to be a reduction in speed limit. It can also be a reduction to 0, a stop, and then the whole thing applies just the same. Then it has to calculate a brake curve that ends at 0. And the speed that the train has to have at a certain point in the track, according to the brake curve that the LZB computer calculated, is called V-sol, the velocity that the train is supposed to have. On the computer system in the train, it actually translates to this. This is the MFD that we have in the train. On the left side the speed clock, on the right side the clock that tells us how much force we are applying, how much brakes we are applying on this side. And as soon as the LZB system is turned on and active, it shows you this B indicator. That means, okay, LZB system is on. As soon as I get data from the track, I will start guiding you. And as soon as the train is picking up data from the track, this Ü-Umlaut button will light up. It is not in the MFD, it is on the left side. It is quite small in our train, but it is there. As soon as it gets lit, you know, okay, the train is not only ready to pick up data, it is actually getting data. And then, obviously, the speed clock shows you the speed that you are traveling, like here, 230 current speed, V ist. And then the data that you get from the LZB computer. It shows you what is the next speed limit that is incoming. Or if there is no speed limit incoming in the next 10 kilometers, it shows you the maximum speed that you can travel at the moment. But usually, or the idea is, it shows you the target speed, the incoming speed of the next speed limit. And then it shows you the distance up to the speed limit. Those two things are the most important things that the LZB computer is supposed to know, so that it can calculate at what speed it is safe to go to get to the target speed as soon as it gets there. And then you have this red indicator on your speed clock, and this is the brake curve speed, the V sol that we just had on the presentation. Usually it is at the V is, because the train is traveling with the speed that is the current limit. But if you get closer to the incoming speed limit, then this number here will climb down in steps of 200 meters. From 9,800 it will go to 9,600, 9,400 and so on until it gets until it gets to 4,000, and then this yellow bar will get smaller and smaller and smaller until you hit the speed limit, so that you actually have a graphical representation showing you that you are actually closing in. This yellow thingy that lit up here in my presentation is the AFB marker. Because your cruise control system, the AFB, automatisches Fahr- und Bremssystem on the ICE, that can get your train to a speed that you set. You have this, we have seen this lever where you can put in speeds from 0 to 330, and the train will get the train to that speed. If it needs to apply propulsion, it will apply propulsion, if you allow him to apply propulsion. If it needs to brake, then it will apply brakes to slow down. If you have LZB on and you turn the AFB on, then the two systems actually lock together, and then the AFB will only get your train to a speed that is the brake curve speed from the LZB system. What is at this position here the current limit of 230 in my fictitious example here. So as a driver, you actually have not so much to do if everything works out fine, just to watch the train and see if everything is working out. And if not, then you have to take over control. But as long as this does not happen, and as long as you don't reach the end of the LZB area, you don't really have to do anything, because the train will slow down as it is supposed to. And let's look at a fictitious example of what happens if you're closing in. I take this AFB marker out again. Let's go to a fictitious example. You're closing in, you get to the 4,000, and then this number will vanish, and just the bar will show you how you are closing in even more. And then when you're closing in at a certain point, the brake curve speed will go below your current speed. And the G marker lights up and tells you you're getting closer to the point where you have to brake. If you have the AFB on, this is no problem at all, because the AFB will take over and get your speed down along with this marker. If you do not have the AFB on, what you are allowed to do, then you have to apply brakes manually. Then you have to get your speed down manually. And if you don't do that, then this marker goes down even more, and the yellow bar gets smaller even more, and then the G thing starts flashing. That shows you that you're actually traveling faster than the calculated brake curve. And if you still don't apply brakes and get your speed under the brake curve, then you get a Zwangsbremsung. Then this happens here, the S lights up and the 1000 Hertz will flash, and you get, at least you're supposed to get this from the directions that you have read, a message that you were speeding. This is a very long German word for you've been speeding, you've been running with too high velocity, and that you got a penalty brake, Zwangsbremsung, penalty brake. Okay, let's assume you did not do this and you complied and actually got your speed down to the 100 as you were supposed to do. Then you can just go on to the next. The LZB Ende Verfahren, what is in this presentation, we will look at this when we get there. Now let's drive the train again. So you can see what we have been talking about. Here is the B indicator telling us that the LZB system is active. The U indicator telling you that the train is actually getting data from the track. Here in the middle of the track, this black cable is the intertwined cable where you get the LZB data from. And we can see that at the moment, 10 kilometers in front of us, there is nothing that blocks us, so we can go with 250. And the red marker is at the 250. That is V target, V sol, and V ist is all at the same. And our AFB, this little yellow marker, puts our speed to 250. What you still can do if you want is to set the speed below. If you move your AFB speed, you see, you can move the AFB speed below the speed that is allowed by the LZB, and then the train will apply brakes. When the train is applying brake, you can see it in this screen here, how it is applying brakes and which one. The yellow brakes here, denoted with an E, are the electric brakes. The ones underneath are the air brakes. You just saw that the train applied air brakes to slow down, and now it released the air brakes and is only using the electric brakes. The light blue brakes on top of it, you won't see them working unless you're actually getting into an emergency brake application. This is the eddy current brake that this train has, the Wirbelstrombremse. This is why it is a WB. But I have only seen this in action when you're actually applying an emergency brake. What you can get from the SIFA, what you can get from any other source with a Zwangsbremsung. So, you saw that I put the lever for the AFB back to maximum, 330, but the LZB knows it cannot go faster than 250 on this route, so 250 is the max. We have seen that now the indication changed. In 4.4 kilometers we will have to reduce our speed to 200. But the calculated speed is that at the moment we can still go with 250. So the LZB system tells us it is safe to go with 250. AFB says, okay, I'm trying to reach 250 and I'm applying full throttle to get there. Now you've seen this is coming closer than 4000, and you can see the bar going down. And now the G is lighting up. That means to hit those 200, the train needs to apply brakes. On the right you can see it is applying electric brakes and even air brakes to slow down to this 200. As soon as this indication changes, all this can change again. But this is not a speed limit that comes from traffic. This is actually a track speed limit. You can see it here. Here the track speed limit is reduced to 200. So the train is actually getting slowed down to 200 by the LZB system combined with the AFB. Now we are there where we wanted to be, at the 200, and the train stopped applying brakes and it is applying power again. Here the blue stuff, what you can see, is the power that the train is applying. All that works without that I have to do anything. And as soon as we are through this part where the speed limit is down to 200, the train will speed up, it will accelerate all by its own. Now you can see it is switched to 250 and the train is accelerating. Brake curve speed is already back at 250, AFB speed marker is at 250, and the train is applying power. I've set the power to maximum so that the IFB can apply as much power as it thinks appropriate. If you're running in like adverse conditions, like in snow or on ice or on wet leaves, then you might want to reduce the throttle that the AFB can use so that it can accelerate a bit more careful. You can see on this right side with this yellow marker, you can see the setting of your throttle. Reduce it or increase it. And if the marker is here, then it is set at max, and this is the actual amount of power that each Fahrmotor, each electric engine in the train is applying. So these 40 kilonewton that are applied. This usually goes for Fahrmotoren. Well, it is actually a percentage here for what you can do. Well, let's see if we can see some of the signs that we have been talking about. Those yellow markers on the hectometric signs, by the way, tell you that you are in an area where the Notbremsüberbrückung, the emergency cutout system, works. You know that the trains have like this emergency brake handle for the passengers to pull, what they are usually not supposed to pull, but they can pull in an emergency. And sometimes there are situations where you don't want the train to actually perform emergency brake application just because some passenger pulled the handle, and for that you have a system that is called the emergency cutout or the Notbremsüberbrückung, so that the train does not get stopped in a tunnel like here, because obviously this can be very dangerous if the train sits in a tunnel and cannot move and all the people cannot get out and there is not enough air or whatever. So the Notbremsüberbrückung prevents the train from getting stopped by an emergency brake application that is initiated by a passenger in a place like this. And the driver gets informed by those yellow markers on the hectographic signs, hectometric signs, that you are in an area where the train will not be stopped by an emergency brake application. Here you can, or you could see running past us a LZB area sign. Yeah, I think so too. The other thing is, on a track like this, you're almost always in an area where the Notbremsüberbrückung works, because you can see there are a lot of hectometric signs with those yellow markers, and there are a lot of tunnels and a lot of bridges. Sometimes you can see flying by the signs that I told you are block markers for the LZB systems, the ones in the circles. No. Here, for example, this is a block marker for the LZB. Yeah, we still have 38 kilometers until our intermediate stop in Fulda. If you are looking for the indicators for your... Aha, this was the train telling you there is another speed limit incoming, the 200 in 9.2 kilometers now. You don't have to acknowledge this information even if the train is making this noise. In German it is called Schnarre. This, well, this horn-like sound. Now we are running downhill. You can see that the train is using its electric brakes to stop us. Here you can see a glitch in the game. The speed clock is telling us that we are going with 0 kilometers. This is sometimes a problem if you use the external cameras and then the internal cameras again, and until the speed value changes here, then you sometimes get a 0 here. So this is not as it is supposed to be. This is a glitch. Again, you can see the G marker lighting up. That means the train is actually getting slowed down soon. And now that we are getting closer to the 200 limit, you can see the LZB and the AFB getting the speed down. The red marker and the yellow marker accordingly slowing down. If I turn the AFB off at this point, can I actually do this? Not on this train with my keyboard shortcut. I would have to go into here, and now it is off. You see the yellow marker vanished. I'm still not slow enough. Now I get a warning. And now I'm below the 200 and the train is content again. And we can go running on. Better turn the AFP on again. Every time you apply the brakes, your throttle will go into a throttle lock, so you will have to go back to 0 again and then apply it anew. On the in-game HUD you would see it with a red square around your drive or throttle setting. If you're running without a HUD, you have to know that. Sometimes you can see it on some displays in the trains, but not so here. What I was trying to explain about the brake pressure in the air brake system. On the left on this screen you have HL, that means Hauptluftleitung. This is the brake pipe for this train. It is at 5 bar usually, and you can see when you're applying air brakes, then this will drop down. This is like these manometers that you have on other locomotives, just in a graphical display. Same on the right for the Hauptluftbehälterleitung. That is the main reservoir for this train, for the air brakes. And this should stay at the 9 bars that it has all the time. If this drops, we have a problem, then the air brakes won't work. Here you can see the setting of the AFB, but this is actually quite a nice display where you can see how the electric brakes and the air brakes and the Wirbelstrom, the eddy current brakes, are working on the different cars in your 2 trains. We have 2 trains, right? Because one is coming from Hamburg, one is coming from Hanover, and we are driving them in double traction now. If you actually want to find something to do on your travels here on high speed, what you could do is turn off the AFB and manage the speed manually. That is allowed. Obviously you could turn off the LZB, that is not allowed, or as soon as you turn off the LZB you will be limited to 160 kilometers max by law. No train in Germany is allowed to go faster than 160 kilometers unless it is guided by LZB or a system that does the same. So what else can you do? You can turn on and off the high beams, at least when you're running during daytime. Incoming limit to 220. This is what our train is telling us. And this might actually be already the slowdown to Fulda. There was an LZB area marker flying by, so we have a new loop that we're traveling on. And we will soon get the G marker, and then the train will bring down the speed to 220. But it is still 6.2 kilometers ahead. So for now the train is just managing the speed with the electric brakes that are applied. You can see it here, the yellow markers are full, meaning electric brakes are applied. Not so the air brakes in the bottom row, not so the eddy current brake. G again. Now the train is telling us we are getting to a stop in 6.6 kilometers. Alright, fine with us. Slow us down to the stop, train. The thing is, the AFB together with the LZB will actually stop our train without us having to do anything. You can see not only the e-brakes are applied, okay, and now they are released again, but the air brakes were applied. Now you can see them. The train is always applying the air brakes from the front to the back and then releasing it the other way around. More or less. Now it's relying to e-brakes. You can see the red mark going down, closing in on our speed limit of 100. And if you actually have a red signal at the end of the platform that you are supposed to stop, then you can just let the train do its job all by its own and let the train be stopped by the computer system at the platform. If you don't have a red signal, then you have to stop the train manually, because then there won't be a reduction of that kind. So our stop indication actually went away. We are only supposed to be at 100 as soon as this marker has hit the ground. So we will have to stop the train manually. We don't have a red light that stops the train for us. As long as we are running under LZB, we do not have to look at the signals that there are. So also this 100 that was incoming, we don't have to acknowledge it, we can just run through it. There was another repeater with the white light in the wrong position. So I'm just using the AFB now to get the train to a speed from which we can actually stop it. So I want to be at about 40 when we reach the platform. So this is what you can do. You can use the LFB, the AFB, to get your train to a slower speed than LZB allows. This using air brakes only. There is the platform, we are at 40. The platform is quite long, almost 500 meters. So we can run with 40 and then gradually use the LFB to slow it down further. Train is applying air brakes and electric brakes automatically, blending both brakes just as it thinks is appropriate. So if you want, you can actually set the AFB to 0 to get the train to a stop, or you can use the air brakes. Well, this platform roof is not in a good position for you to see the signal, but anyway. Okay, here we are. We can take a look at the platform. Then open our doors using this switch here. Train says doors are open. Türen geöffnet. People are getting out. This train has this green stripe, by the way, because it is the Deutschlands schnellster Klimaschützer livery, meaning Germany's fastest climate protector. And this is why it is green, to show everybody that we are using a very green and environment-friendly means of transport. So to prepare for our start, what we can do at the moment is set the AFB to 0, set the throttle to 0 while we are stationary. It is, I think, okay to hold the train in place with a brake application of only 1B. You can see that all the air brakes are activated. The pressure in the brake pipe is at about, what will it be, 4.5 or 4.4, and that all the brake cylinders on the air brake systems are filled. This is what this is enough to keep the train in place. People can get out and get in. And now we have to wait, because you can see that even with all the explanations and all the playing around with the AFB and stuff, we have still 2 to 3 minutes to wait until we are supposed to go on. Another ICE3 running in double traction, and over there an ICE1 coming in. What do we have in this station? In trains, we have a Dosto train pulled by a 146. With the Steuerwagen at the end, the cab car. Strangely enough, they have both lights on, as far as I can see. Yeah, Those are the white lights, not the red ones, or are those the red ones? Maybe they are the red ones. Okay, they look quite white, but they're supposed to be the red ones. So the loco is running in the back on this train. We can see the indicator here telling us that the doors are open. As long as the doors are open, we obviously cannot drive. We're not pulling any electricity from the overhead catenary here, Oberstrom, that is what is telling us how much energy we are pulling out of the catenary. As long as we're sitting stationary here, we're not pulling any. This is the volts that we could get from, or what we are getting from the Oberstrom, and this is in Germany. In the game, on the ideal value of 15 all the time. In reality, people say that this actually fluctuates quite heavily. You can see that our main current breaker, Hauptschalter HS, is switched on. Okay, I almost missed the time to close the doors.
Schließvorgang eingeleitet.
Schließvorgang eingeleitet. Door closing procedure initiated. And then, to start again, what do we have to do? Release the brakes. AFB back to max. Wait a bit for the brakes to release. And then apply power. You can see that the air brakes on the cars do not fully release before some power is applied. As a safety precaution, so that the train doesn't roll backwards until it gets propulsion. To get the train into motion, don't use too much power, otherwise you can get wheel slips. But as soon as it is rolling, you can throttle up quite fast. You're typically not over throttling it, because the AFB will limit you. If you want to prevent the AFB from overspeeding, especially when you're going downhill, then just be careful with the throttle and don't allow the AFB too much throttle. Keep it back a bit. So as long as we are running up to this 100 limit, I stick with 70%, that is totally enough. I think the AFB would handle maximum throttle as well. Now the limit went up. Only when running downhill you have to be a bit careful, because then sometimes you go 1 or 2 clicks over limit and then you get docked with 15. You can see that at some point in time we must have gotten 15. Or was that for the stop? Maybe. Didn't pay attention. So now on this screen you can see that we are pulling actually energy from the overhead catenary is getting less, because we are going downhill and the train actually has to apply electric brakes. When we are applying electric brakes, then we are not pulling energy from the overhead catenary, but ideally we are pushing energy back into the system, into the overhead catenary. So regenerative braking is actually quite common on German trains. So that all the energy that is pulled out with the electric brakes out of the train goes back into the system, and then you don't need that much net energy to get your train. You can see that this signal was actually blackened. We have talked about that. We don't have to heed signals that are on the track as long as we are running under LZB. But this can actually be quite disturbing for a driver. If you see a signal on the red, it does not apply for you because you're running under LZB, but it is still something that you don't want your train drivers to get accustomed to. Just running past red signals with 250 kilometers, so they are actually turned off. So they are black. You know that usually a black signal means you have to treat it like a red signal. But when you're running under LZB and you don't have to pay attention to the signals, then obviously you don't have to pay attention to a black signal. But for the stop signals, the red ones, and the yellow Vorsignale, the distance signals, they blacken them out. They say they don't want to impose it on drivers to run red signals, and yeah, I think it is just you don't want to wear off the inhibition to run red signals. What is a good thing? I think if you're a trained driver, it is so hardwired into you that you don't run red signals unless you thought twice or thrice or 5 times about it, if you're allowed to do it. Like with the Befehl 40 on the PZB, or with the 2 white auxiliary lights, or the V sign on the signal. There are actually a couple of signals that allow you to run a red signal, but then very cautiously with a limited speed and not fast. And you don't want to wear off this inhibition, I'm quite sure. So if there is actually a red signal or a yellow signal, a yellow distance signal on the track where you are running with your LZB, then those signals are turned dark until you passed. We're having quite heavy clouds in the sky, but still no drop of rain. Well, some rain might actually be quite nice. Then we could use this huge ass windscreen wiper that we have on the ICE3. So what light settings are appropriate for running into the tunnel, running out of the tunnel, under which weather conditions or whatever? I'm not really quite sure about that. Well, now you can see that the IFB ran the speed limit by 1 click, and we will get, or we already got docked, or we are getting docked with 15 points. So if you want to have a perfect run and get all the points that you can get, you have to watch your AFB when you are in a high speed descent, because then sometimes it can happen that it overspeeds for 1 or 2 clicks, and that it takes some time to get back to the limit. So what can you do? One thing is, before you get into the decline, you set the AFB to slower speed, like 240. Then it is obviously safeguarded that you cannot go beyond the 250, or you reduce the power before the train actually goes to the limit. Then it needs to get to the limit with more caution. So in case you were wondering what happens if there is a malfunction in the LZB system, like for example, for whatever reason you don't get data out of this cable in the track. There is a procedure actually for that, and I'm very happy that Dovetail Games made a scenario where this case happens, where you don't get data from the LZB cable, transmission failure, Übertragungsausfall, and you can play through this, and I will do this on the stream on Sunday. Play this scenario on the second one too, so we can have a look on the special scenarios in LZB. There are actually a couple more on the older ICE that is in the Schnellfahrstrecke Aachen-Köln, with not the MFD, not the computerized display, but those rounded indicator lights. You can actually see all the indicators that belong to those special situations, like Gegengleisauftrag or something like that. But I don't know if there are scenarios that cover this. I doubt it. But maybe we will be getting something like this in future. At the moment, you don't actually need to know a lot to use the LZB system, because it more or less does everything on its own, except for the release process at the end. That is sometimes confusing for people, so we will go through this step by step when we go to or arrive at Würzburg. We will check it on the presentation before that, and then we will see it in the game as we drive into Würzburg. And all those special situations, you can only run into them in the game when they are scripted in a scenario, I guess. I guess in the timetable mode they don't happen. So what do you think of the route, AJ? It is tunnel bridge, tunnel bridge, tunnel bridge for most of the parts. But in between, I think it is not your route. In between, there are parts that are really beautiful. Especially if you find the time to use the external cameras and look up and down the valleys, rivers, small villages. But just imagine what an effort it takes to build a route like this. How expensive it is to build tunnels, to build bridges. Every meter more or less is in a tunnel or on a bridge. Yeah. Now the LZB is indicating that we are running up to a stop in 9.4 kilometers. But this obviously can be because there is a train on the track somewhere, and the train is occupying the track, so that we must not enter this block, giving us a stop. But if the timetable works out, then the train might actually leave that part of the track, diverge, and then this indication can just go away and we can go back to line speed like this. Now our brake indication changed because the distance climbed. It jumped to 8.4, so we do not slow down now. You can see how we are closing in, push, and now the train is out of the track. We are back to clear skies, 250, 10 kilometers ahead. Speed limit of 200 incoming. But so far ahead that the train does not think it is necessary to react to it. Still 40 kilometers to Würzburg. Unfortunately, I did not find any service that runs from Fulda to Würzburg. So we have to go the whole length of 180 kilometers to see the release process in the end. What I really like is the running noise on this train. Even without an engine noise, only the noise that the wagons make when they run on the track, and in my opinion it is actually just like the noise that you hear when you're traveling on an ICE3 train. Now you can see that the system gets the train to the limited speed of 200 gradually. Red marker, yellow marker for LZB limit, brake curve limit, and the AFB marker going to 200 simultaneously. We can see that we're closing in here on this meter. 300 meters, 200 meters, 100 meter, and chuck, we are in the 200 limit. And for a limit of 200 we have 10 kilometers of clear skies. Now we passed through the area with the reduced speed. Limit is back to 250, 10 kilometers ahead, clear skies, train can go full throttle. Been a bit lazy with my lights. That'd be actually quite interesting to know if there are any directives for drivers on how they are supposed to use their lights on tracks like this, where you're running into the tunnel, out of the tunnel, into the tunnel, out of the tunnel. If you just go through the tunnel with normal marker lights, or if you are supposed to use your high beams, and if you can leave them on, or if you're supposed to switch them down when you're out of the tunnel. Probably you have to switch down the lights when you're entering a station, or when a train is coming from the opposite direction, so that you don't blind people or the driver in the other train. So this is actually a part of the track where we are out of this tunnel bridge. And we're already getting closer to Würzburg. This is actually such a difference if you're traveling to Würzburg from Fulda, like we do here, Kassel-Fulda, or if you're traveling to Würzburg from Frankfurt, like from Frankfurt Airport, then you go via Gemünden, and there is a part of track that we know from the Main-Spessart DLC that is very slow, and the ICE has to go with 100 kilometers per hour through this part of the track, and you think you're just camping there in the mountains. The green on the loco is annoying you. I am sorry to hear that. But they are actually still using this. When I got home from work, I saw 2 trains of that kind. With this green nose. So I think when we are in a distance of 15 kilometers, I will switch back to the presentation and go into the ending procedure, because when we have traveled so far that the LZB wires end and all the track installations end, there must be some procedure to get the train back to normal train control, meaning PZB control. And this means getting the train under a limit of 160 or lower. And for that there is a certain protocol that you have to go through. Yeah, the dogs are going crazy again. So maybe just use this straight piece of track to look at the presentation again and see how this Ende Verfahren works. LZB Ende Verfahren, the ending procedure. When the LZB installation in the track end, then you will get a message. You will get this sign Ende on yellow ground, and it is flashing. The directives say that at the same time the display displays you those 2 text messages, LZB Ende, meaning LZB end of course, on yellow ground, and it is asking you to hit the Freitaste, that is the PZB release key. Important, it is the release key, not the acknowledge key. So not the key that you would usually press if you get a yellow signal and you go into the 1000 Hertz. No, it's the Freitaste, the release taste, that you use to break free out of a 1000 Hertz monitoring. As soon as you hit the release taste, then the flashing will stop. If you get the text messages, what we won't get in the game, but if you get them, then it will tell you to obey the signals and the timetable. And then you run for the last part on the LZB track with this Ende marker, not flashing but steady. And you can see on the bar, excuse me, on the yellow bar on the end, you can see how far it is until it ends. And you can see the speed with what you will be released from LZB. And as soon as the yellow bar went to the end, then you are out of LZB, and then you go into PZB. What you get told by your display, it tells you you're back into PZB control, and since you are in PZB-O mode, you get the 85. And then you have to obey the PZB procedures. That can be quite harsh, because as soon as you are released, what you are usually at a signal, if that signal gives you a yellow aspect, like being yellow, being green over yellow, or showing a yellow number, then you have to hit at once the acknowledge key from the PZB. The PZB acknowledge to go into 1000 Hertz monitoring. And if you fail to do that, then the PZB can get you at Zwangsbremsung. We will see that, because we will get this situation where we will be released at a signal that requires us to press the PZB acknowledge. And then there will be a second signal. We have to get the second 1000 Hertz, and then to stop at the platform we will actually getting a 500 Hertz because we are running up a red signal. And then you have to be careful, because if you hit the Freitaste again, the PCB release key, while you're under the 1000 Hertz and traveled far enough, then you release from the 1000 Hertz what you can do, but you are not allowed to, because the 500 Hertz monitoring is incoming. And then as soon as you hit the 500 Hertz magnet, you get a Zwangsbremsung, because if you release, although you are not allowed to, because there is another monitoring incoming, then you will get a Zwangsbremsung at the 500 Hertz without much more ado. So careful not to mix up the PZB release and the PZB fry, and another the PZB release and the PZB acknowledge, the Freitaste and the Wachsamkeitstaste. And then a next thing that you need to know when you get released from PZB, to use the AFB, you have to set it to 0 and then back to the target speed, because otherwise it won't work. It will be just deactivated. You have to set it to 0 and then up again, so that you don't forget to reset your AFB and have it on 330, and as soon as you release, the train is starting off. Wrong way around. This is the correct button. So this is what awaits us for the ending procedure. The dogs have calmed down, luckily. They just didn't like the presentation, I guess. And when going through this release procedure, you actually have to be careful with the CIFA, because it is something that you tend to forget when you are busy with going through these other procedures. So we will go into a funnel now that gets us slowly down to a speed where we can get released. I will have it on this screen now, so that we can see what happens. I can already take the AFB down a bit, so that it does not take so long to reduce it later. System took us down from 250 to 230, then to 200. You can see that the train is applying constantly the electric brakes to slow it down, and sometimes the air brakes on top of it, sometimes releasing them. At the moment they are activated because we want to go down to the 200. As soon as we are at the 200, they will probably be released again. Every time the speed limit changes, we get the Schnarre, this sound. Next limit is 160. Next limit is 100. We are already in the brake curve. Train is taking us down. Now it is going to 60, and this will be our release velocity. We don't... Now the Ende is flashing. I press the release key. Ende is steady. And now we can see that we are going down to a release speed of 60. And we can see on the bar how far it is, how much distance there is still. And the train is getting us to the 60. What I usually like to do at this point is to go faster to the 60 release velocity and take down the AFB to the 60 here, so that we are actually a bit ahead, or to 50 even, so that we don't miss the 60 by one tick or two. And now we are free, and now there is the first signal, and we have to acknowledge the 3. We have to set the AFB to 0, and then we can pump it up to 40 or whatever we want. Now we are getting a yellow that we have to acknowledge again. Since we are PZBO, we need to be below 60 before we hit the 500 Hertz. But 40 is already our speed for the platform, so running with 40 is a safe thing to do. What we don't see on this display here is whether we are in a restricted or a non-restricted 1000 Hertz monitoring. I'm not quite sure how those displays are supposed to work. I've been discussing this with my friend Open Minded last night, and he says it is okay and correct that there are no text messages anymore telling you about which kind of monitoring you get. Alone from the flashing 85, you don't know that, because it is flashing as long as the monitoring is active. Now we got the 500 Hertz, and if you by accident released from one of the 1000 Hertz monitorings before, what you could do, because the yellow lamp was off, then you would have gotten a Zwangsbremsung here at the 500 Hertz magnet. Careful when you're trying to stop here and try to hit the stop marker in the perfect position, because the stop marker here is placed directly in front of the red signal. If you just go 1 meter more, you're sped out. That is actually something I thought that they did not want to do in the game anymore, that the stop markers are so close to the red signals, because sometimes the AI trains were rushing the red signals because they failed to stop in front of them, and well, they did it anyway. Here. So I will not drive until I get to the 1 meter mark. I will stop the train before, because you can see you're already much too close to the red signal, and if you go those additional meters, you're just standing in front of it. Okay, what do we do? Brakes to 1B, AFB to 0, throttle to 0, and then have a look at the platform, and then open the doors. The annoying green Klimaschützer livery. Würzburg station. Our passengers have arrived safely. We did not spat out. And this is practically all you need to know about LZB and more if you just want to run the services, even without a HUD. End of service. And end of the stream today. On Sunday we will resume this by playing 2 scenarios, or whatever, at least one of the scenarios I have in mind. The other one we will have to see. We will be running the ICE1, the train that you see in the background here, and what you have to know about this train in particular. How to recover from an emergency brake on this train. It is a bit special because you have to fill your brake pipe manually again on the ICE1, what a lot of people don't know if you look into the forums. And yeah, have a look at this Übertragungsfehler, this transmission failure scenario, and what other scenario with special situations for LZB there are in the game. For now, thanks a lot for moderating, AJ. Thanks a lot for watching, and take care. See you around.